Hello, everybody. Welcome to Joe Palmetto, Joe the Lawyer. Today, we are going to talk about the Epstein files and why nobody is being prosecuted in the United States as a result of the release of these files. This is a question that many people have been asking, and you keep seeing it on social media. I keep seeing it on various spaces in the internet. We're going to look right now at an article, a video that asks that very question. Why is no one being prosecuted over the Epstein files? Before we watch this video, though, which I'm going to use to kind of set up the reason, I'm going to tell you why nobody's being prosecuted over the Epstein files. It's only a minute and a half video. Before we do that, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Trying to grow the channel, so any support is greatly appreciated. Also, raise your cup, your glass in the air for me. Some people hate it, some people love it, but at the same time, sip. As you can hear, my throat's still a little scratchy, and I'm feeling a bit sick tonight. That's why I haven't been making videos all week. But raise your cup, your glass in the air. Have a sip with me. It tastes better when we sip together. Cheers. Nobody could say I never drink water. Okay, let's watch this video so I can explain to you, in my opinion, why I believe nobody is being prosecuted over the Epstein files.
While all the documents released on top of one another, we're told it will be twice the height of the Eiffel Tower. But despite that huge amount of paper and photos, it seems that's not enough for the Department of Justice to bring any new prosecutions.
There he is.
Epstein himself, who's dead, the only other person who's been found guilty of a crime is his British sidekick, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Or is it Ghislaine?
Who's been put away for 20 years.
What a sketch.
Still investigating Epstein's crimes are a committee here in Congress, and they don't have the power to charge anyone with a crime. The committee has said it does want to speak to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, but they can't make him come here and answer questions. If they did issue a summons or a subpoena, as it's known here, he could be arrested for refusing to answer, but only if he stepped foot on US soil. The same thing could happen to Peter Mandelson, who was Britain's ambassador in Washington until he was sacked last September. As for the rich and powerful among America's political, business and entertainment elites, most of them men, big questions still remain, though many of them will feel that the jeopardy is largely over.
So that's the questions have been floating around social media, various website news topics, I'm sure on your standard cable news or local news, which I don't really watch. Why are these people that are in the Epstein files not being prosecuted? Now, first, let's look at one individual we know who's being prosecuted basically as a result of the Epstein file release. Former Prince Andrew, this is in the United Kingdom, arrested following Epstein file revelations. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. I'm curious to know how these royals get their last names. I don't know. Is King Charles? Is he Mountbatten Windsor? Like, is that his last name? I kind of thought these royals just, they just kind of had one name. I don't know. Was arrested on his birthday Thursday on suspicion of misconduct in public office. Misconduct in public office. So, hopefully what's going through your mind is the question, well, the allegations against this guy, and there's a lot of people that have said this, is that he slept with underage women. And I believe, one of the main allegations is from Virginia Giuffre, who, died of suicide not too long ago. But she stated that, she was quote unquote trafficked to him and that she had sexual relations with him. Okay. So when she was underage. So shouldn't the question be, why is he not being charged with what in America would be called statutory sexual assault and or indecent assault, involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, IDSI. These are the typical charges that pedophiles are charged with, okay? So if an adult has sex with a child or, rapes or molests a child, that's what they're charged with, these serious felony charges. That's not what Mr. Prince Andrew's charged with. Suspicion of misconduct in public office. That doesn't sound like sexual assault. That doesn't sound like indecent, deviant sexual intercourse. That doesn't sound like indecent assault, corruption of minors, because it's not. The allegation against him is he committed some sort of misconduct while he was in an official public office. And that right there kind of tells you everything that you need to know. Now, I don't know anything about this charge, and I don't know much about the United Kingdom's justice system. But what I do know is he's not charged with molesting or abusing a minor child. And that's what you would expect to come from all of this. He's likely charged with this misconduct in public office because that's an offense that the prosecution can actually prove. Because the evidence that is needed to prove that type of offense beyond a reasonable doubt is much, much less than the evidence that is needed to say that on X date and time he had sexual intercourse with a minor. The evidence misconduct in public office, oh my gosh. I mean, that could be almost anything, right? It's a very general offense. And when you have an offense, it's extremely general, right? Like, I'll give you some examples in American law. Like, disorderly conduct can mean almost anything. One that's a little controversial is endangering welfare of children can mean almost anything. When I say that is endangering welfare of children can be, you could be speeding in your Ferrari and you're endangering the welfare of a child. Excuse me. Or, it could be as bad as you didn't feed the child and the child's, starting to become famished and skinny and suffering health issues from it, right? Which appears to be much more serious. Maybe it's not. Driving under the influence with a child in your car can be endangering the welfare of a child. Misconduct in public office can mean almost anything. I'll tell you what he's not charged with. He's not charged with corruption of minors. He's not charged with indecent assault, which is what you would expect or maybe even what you would hope for. And therein lies the problem. To prove an offense like indecent assault or corruption of minors, you can't just rely on documents in a whole bunch of emails from the ringleader, Jeffrey Epstein, and or Ghislaine Maxwell, okay? You can't just rely on statements from them. In these documents, number one, those documents, first of all, are hearsay. They're out-of-court statements that will be used for the truth of the matter asserted. You cannot convict somebody or really even file a case against somebody on hearsay alone. That case will get annihilated in court. So what do you need in order to convict these people who are quote-unquote named in the files? And one thing about the files, and I haven't reviewed them all, but I've read a decent number of them, is they use code words, and a lot of it's not specific as to what actually occurred, but you can infer from the emails what did occur, right? Like with Bill Gates, appears he had, sex with these Russian prostitutes. And so you can infer things from these emails, but what you can't do is prove an entire case in court, in a trial, in a court of law, where there are strict rules about what evidence can be presented. And so the main ingredient that these quote-unquote prosecutions are missing are individual victims coming forward. And these individual victims coming forward and being willing to testify and essentially stating on X date, this occurred with this person. And you can see not even Prince Andrew is charged with that. So, if you watch the Netflix documentary on Epstein, there's a whole slew of women who accuse him of basically indecent assault on them while they were minors, okay? And soliciting prostitution, all right, yeah, but basically pedophile charges. And so when they were lining up the case against Epstein, they had people that were going to testify against him. But one thing about this is the other individuals that these women were trafficked to, we don't have them coming forward with credible statements that could be used in a court of law. So without those victims coming forward, you have a big problem. you really can't prove the case without that. You would need a massive abundance. I mean, you would need evidence beyond belief, like circumstantial evidence beyond belief to do it without the actual victim of the crime. So if the victims aren't coming forward, you're not going to have any prosecutions over this unless it's something tertiary, like what happened to Prince Andrew. Even this, the UK ambassador to the United States, Mandelson, he doesn't have any charges. He was just pushed out politically because it looked bad. And none of these other people in these other countries, they're saying, oh, this fallout's happening in these other countries. Maybe a little bit, but not wide-scale prosecutions or anything like that. So, first thing you need is you need more than just some vague emails that you can draw inferences from. You need actual people, and it would help if you have more than one. Multiple witnesses. You know, Bill Cosby went through a trial, and he beat that. He won his case, and he had multiple victims that testified against him. Now, I do think he was convicted at trial. I can't remember. But even having victims doesn't guarantee the prosecution will be successful. So why in the world would prosecutors bring cases against people if their names are simply mentioned in emails? Again, the bottom line is there's no prosecutions because there is simply not enough evidence. The evidence just does not exist, at least as of yet, to prosecute these people. Now, another issue is your statute of limitations. So a lot of this misconduct goes back to the early 2000s. So we're talking 20 years ago. Epstein's, I think his conviction was in like 2014 or 2015. And not to say nothing occurred after that. I'm sure it did. But it appears that like the people that he actually trafficked other women to, was not quite as numerous as the women that he trafficked to him. So he did traffic these women to other men, but what would need to happen is those women need to come forward, and they need to come forward in a more timely manner. Like 20 years later, the problem is it casts doubt on their testimony, even if they did come forward, with such a delay in reporting. So you don't have a victim, and then even if you did have a victim, because they waited so long, the case is going to be difficult at trial. Not to mention the statute of limitations, which depending on the state would determine, we're talking about Florida, federal charges could be brought. And I'm not sure what the statute of limitations are. I know following the Me Too movement, a lot of statute of limitations were extended. But my understanding is a lot of these statutes of limitations, like once the person becomes an adult, they still only have so many years, 10 years, 20 years, in order to report the conduct, but the misconduct. But some of this literally goes back to almost the 1990s. Early 2000s, we're talking 20 plus years. So there's multiple issues with there being prosecutions for Epstein. Number one, there's not enough evidence. And that goes right to the fact that these emails are hearsay, which you could label as number two. A lot of what we see in the files are hearsay. So it needs to be supported by additional evidence. What evidence should that be? Number three, victims coming forward. And it just appears that not enough victims have come forward. Number four, even if the victims do come forward, they have a problem with their delay in reporting, which means their story may not be believed. It casts doubt on the credibility of their story. And finally, number five, you have the statute of limitations. And when you put all of those elements together, it means that you really shouldn't expect there to be any or many prosecutions to come out of this. The one key figure here is obviously Ghislaine Maxwell. And if she came forward with specific names and she could give specific dates, and then you coupled that with a victim coming forward, you may be able to prosecute if the statute of limitations hasn't made that impossible. So don't expect any any or many prosecutions out of this. Even the one that did happen, Prince Andrew, it is very much not a direct pedophile, type crime. So, you know, again, don't expect too much out of this. I'm not saying that should be the case. I mean, I think there should still be investigations, and we should still know as much as we can, just because of the extent of this human trafficking ring that Epstein ran, and all the world leaders, United States leaders, but global leaders that it implicates. It's certainly in the public interest to get to the bottom of this, but it doesn't mean that there's going to be prosecutions. It's just very difficult legally, and from a standpoint of going to trial and proving the case beyond a reasonable doubt with sufficient admissible evidence that can be admitted at court, sufficient admissible, incredible evidence. I just think it's not there. And so the prosecutions aren't going to be there. Doesn't mean Congress shouldn't investigate. Doesn't mean we shouldn't know more. I think we should, just because of the depth of this depravity and all of the global leaders that it implicated. I do think we should know more about it. So I just wanted to put a comment on this. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm Joe Palmetto, Joe the Lawyer. I'm a practicing criminal defense lawyer in Pittsburgh, PA. I have my own law firm, Joe Palmetto Law, going on 13 years. There's more information on me in the description below. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Looking to grow this channel. If you think I gave a unique perspective, you think it's something that you haven't heard before, or my take on it is worthwhile, please do so. Please say like, comment, share. Looking to grow the channel. I truly appreciate it.